I was flying economy back to Atlanta to finalize my divorce when I helped a quiet elderly man sitting next to me make sense of some scattered financial reports. He offered to escort me into the courthouse as a thank you. The moment we walked through those double doors, my arrogant husband took one look at my new friend and laughed in his face. My husband had absolutely no idea that he was mocking the founding partner of the very law firm where he worked. Let me tell you exactly how that single flight completely destroyed my husband's entire existence. The airplane cabin smelled of stale coffee and recycled air. I sat in a cramped window seat staring at the glowing screen of my phone. A new text message from DeAndre had just popped up. Sign the papers today. You take the rusted Honda. I keep the Buckhead mansion. Do not get greedy. A glorified bookkeeper does not deserve a single dime of my hard-earned assets. I did not shed a single tear. 5 years of marriage to a narcissistic corporate attorney had completely drained my capacity to weep. DeAndre loved to diminish me. He loved to call me a glorified bookkeeper, conveniently ignoring the fact that I was a senior forensic financial analyst. I tracked hidden money for a living. I spent my days unraveling complex corporate fraud, yet I had somehow missed the massive emotional fraud sitting right across my own dining room table. I locked my phone screen and slid it into my purse. Beside me, an elderly black gentleman let out a heavy, frustrated sigh. He was wearing a rumpled gray suit that looked a decade old, and his tie was pulled loose around his collar. His tray table was completely covered in chaotic stacks of financial reports, balance sheets, and audit summaries. He was muttering quietly to himself, crossing out numbers with a red pen and rubbing his temples in clear defeat. Normally, I would mind my own business. But as my eyes drifted over the paper resting closest to my elbow, my professional instincts kicked in. The spreadsheet detailed quarterly operational costs for a massive commercial real estate acquisition. The numbers were neatly aligned, but the patterns were glaringly wrong. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "I do not mean to pry, but you are looking in the wrong column." The older man paused and turned to look at me. His eyes were sharp, carrying a weight of intelligence that contradicted his disheveled appearance. He raised a gray eyebrow. "Is that so? And what exactly makes you say that?" I pointed to a specific line item near the bottom of the page. "You are trying to find where this capital bled out during the third quarter. You keep circling the vendor payouts. But the vendor payouts are a distraction. Look at the consulting fees listed right above the equipment depreciation. They spike by exactly $12 million right before the acquisition date. Those are not consulting fees. That is a shell company siphoning funds through dummy invoices. If you trace the tax identification numbers of those three consulting firms, I guarantee you, they all lead back to the exact same holding company in the Cayman Islands." The man stared at the paper. He blinked, pulled a pair of reading glasses from his breast pocket, and scrutinized the line I had pointed out. The frustration on his face slowly melted into absolute shock. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, scribbled down a few calculations, and let out a low whistle of astonishment. "I have had 3 senior accounting firms looking at these books for a month," he said, his voice laced with awe. "And you found a $12 million discrepancy from an economy-class window seat in less than 10 seconds. Who exactly are you?" "My name is Maya," I replied, offering a polite smile. "I am a forensic financial analyst, or as my husband prefers to call me, a glorified bookkeeper." The man chuckled, a deep, warm sound that made his eyes crinkle. "Well, Maya, your husband is a complete fool. My name is Harrison. It is a genuine pleasure to meet you." For the rest of the 2-hour flight to Atlanta, Harrison and I talked. We did not discuss my impending divorce, nor did we discuss his personal life. We talked about numbers, algorithms, and the thrill of uncovering hidden truths within financial structures. He possessed an incredibly sharp legal mind, asking me complex questions about tracking offshore transactions and biometric security within financial software. By the time the plane touched down, I felt a renewed sense of confidence. DeAndre had spent years convincing me I was nothing. Harrison, a complete stranger, had reminded me of my own brilliance. As we walked through the airport terminal, Harrison adjusted his suit jacket. "You mentioned earlier that you are heading straight to the courthouse to finalize your divorce today," he said. "Yes," I replied, bracing myself for the inevitable conflict. My husband and his mother are waiting for me. They want to make sure I walk away with absolutely nothing. Harrison stopped walking. He pulled a pair of dark sunglasses from his pocket and slid them onto his face. Then allow me to escort you, Maya. It is the absolute least I can do to repay you for saving me $12 million today. I insist. I appreciated the offer of moral support, so I agreed. We took a cab to the Fulton County Courthouse. The imposing marble columns and heavy brass doors usually intimidated me, but today I walked with my head held high. Harrison walked quietly a few steps behind me, keeping a deliberately low profile. The moment I stepped into the grand lobby, the ambush began. DeAndre was standing near the security checkpoint, wearing a bespoke navy blue suit that cost more than my first car. Clinging to his arm was a young woman in a skin-tight red dress his new mistress brought along specifically to humiliate me. But the real threat was standing right next to them. Gloria, my mother-in-law. Gloria was dripping in ostentatious wealth, wearing a garish fur coat and gripping a designer handbag like a weapon. The moment she spotted me, her face contorted with pure disgust. She did not even wait for me to approach before she started shouting. "There she is!" Gloria sneered, her voice echoing through the marble lobby. The charity case finally decided to show up. I stopped walking. DeAndre smirked, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Gloria marched right up to me, pulled a thick stack of settlement papers from her designer bag, and threw them violently at my chest. The heavy papers hit me and scattered across the polished floor. "Pick those up and sign them right now," Gloria commanded, pointing a manicured finger at my face. I told DeAndre from the very beginning not to marry a fatherless girl from the South Side. You people always come looking for a handout. You have no pedigree. You are not in the right sororities. Your family does not belong to our exclusive country clubs, and you certainly do not belong in Buckhead. My son provided a roof over your head for 5 years. 5 years of feeding you and putting clothes on your back is more than enough. You are not getting a single penny of his money. Sign the papers and get out of our sight. I looked down at the scattered papers, then back up at Gloria. I did not raise my voice. I did not give her the satisfaction of seeing me angry. I paid the mortgage on that house for the first 2 years, while your son was studying for the bar exam, I said calmly. I am not asking for a handout. I am asking for what is legally mine. DeAndre let out a loud, mocking laugh. Legally yours. You have got to be kidding me. You cannot even afford a decent lawyer, Maya. What are you going to do? It was then that DeAndre noticed Harrison standing quietly a few feet behind me. Harrison was still wearing his rumpled gray suit and his dark sunglasses, hands clasped peacefully in front of him. DeAndre looked the elderly man up and down, his lips curling into a cruel, arrogant sneer. Who is this? DeAndre mocked, stepping closer to Harrison. Did you bring your father to protect you, Maya? Oh, wait, you do not have a father, so who is this? Your new sugar daddy? Did you find a broke senior citizen at the bus stop and drag him here to beg for sympathy? Let me give you a piece of advice, old man. You picked the wrong charity case. She is walking out of here with nothing. Finding a poor grandfather to stand behind you is not going to get you a better settlement. Gloria crossed her arms and scoffed. It is pathetic. She brings a stray off the street to a legal proceeding. Just sign the papers, Maya, before we have security throw both of you out. I stood perfectly still. I did not need to say a word. Harrison stepped forward. His movements were slow, deliberate, and commanded an immediate, terrifying authority. He reached up and slowly pulled the dark sunglasses off his face, slipping them into his breast pocket. He locked his sharp, unyielding eyes directly onto DeAndre. DeAndre froze. The arrogant smirk vanished from his face in a fraction of a second. The color completely drained from his cheeks, leaving him looking sickly and pale. His custom-tailored suit suddenly seemed entirely too big for his shrinking frame. His confident posture crumbled, his shoulders sagging as his eyes widened in absolute paralyzing fear. He took a stumbling step backward, nearly tripping over the pointed heels of his mistress. Mr. Sterling. DeAndre stammered, his voice cracking and pitching upward in sheer panic. Chairman, what are you doing here? Gloria frowned, looking confused at her son's sudden terror. DeAndre, what is wrong with you? Who is this man? DeAndre could not even look at his mother. He was staring at Harrison as if he were looking at the Grim Reaper himself. Harrison Sterling was not a broke senior citizen. He was the founding partner of Vanguard, and Sterling the most ruthless, powerful corporate law firm in the entire state of Georgia. He was the man who owned the very firm where DeAndre worked. He held DeAndre's entire career, his reputation and his future in the palm of his hand. Harrison did not raise his voice. He spoke with the quiet, lethal calm of a man who could destroy lives with a single phone call. "You are the senior associate gunning for a partnership at my firm, correct?" Harrison asked, his voice echoing coldly in the quiet lobby. "Yes, sir," DeAndre whispered, visibly trembling. "I am. I have been working tirelessly on the new merger." Harrison tilted his head slightly, his gaze piercing right through DeAndre's expensive suit. "After witnessing how you speak to people in public, and more importantly, after witnessing how you treat your brilliant wife, I have realized a severe lapse in your judgment and character. Vanguard and Sterling does not elevate men who behave like unruly children. Please, Mr. Sterling." DeAndre begged, lifting his hands defensively. "This is a misunderstanding. She is trying to ruin me. I was just trying to protect my assets." Harrison ignored his pleading. He pulled his phone from his pocket. "I will be calling Human Resources immediately. They will have your suspension papers drawn up and waiting on your desk by 5 o'clock this evening. Do not bother returning to the office tomorrow. We will be conducting a full review of your conduct, and from what I have seen today, your future at my firm is officially non-existent." DeAndre's knees buckled. He collapsed onto one of the wooden benches in the lobby, burying his face in his hands as his mistress awkwardly backed away from him, realizing the money train had just derailed. He had lost his promotion, his reputation, and likely his entire career, all within the span of 2 minutes. But Gloria was not done. She could not comprehend the power dynamic shifting so violently out of her favor. Her son was crying on a bench, and I was standing tall beside one of the most powerful men in the city. Her face turned a dangerous shade of purple as she pointed a shaking finger at me. "You think you have won!" Gloria shrieked, ignoring the stares of the passing lawyers and security guards. "You think bringing some hotshot boss to the courthouse is going to save you. You are nothing. My older son Jamal is married to Sarah. Do you hear me? Sarah comes from old money. She is white, she is wealthy, and her family has connections that could crush you like a bug. I will call Sarah right now. We will use her family's power to drag you through the mud. We will bury you in legal fees until you are begging on the street." I looked at Gloria, feeling nothing but cold resolve. I had spent 5 years shrinking myself to make this family feel tall. That time was officially over. "Make the call, Gloria." I said, my voice ringing out clear and steady. "Call Sarah. Call Jamal. Call whoever you want. Because by the time I am done with this family, none of you will have a single dime left to your names." I turned my back on Gloria's screaming and walked toward the court elevators, Harrison falling into step beside me. The war had just begun, but I already held the winning hand. The ringing of my phone cuts through the silence of my temporary apartment. I look at the screen and see DeAndre's name flashing. He is not calling to apologize. Men like DeAndre do not apologize. They only call to gloat. I swipe the screen to accept the call and press the phone to my ear. His breathing is heavy and excited on the other end of the line. "Maya," he says, his voice thick with unearned arrogance. "I just wanted to give you a quick update on your little coding hobby." I listen quietly, letting him speak. "I registered Mtrace this morning," he continues. "It is fully incorporated under an LLC in my name. It turns out your little pet project is exactly what the board of directors at Vanguard and Sterling has been looking for." I do not react. I do not give him the satisfaction of hearing my breath catch. I remember the nights I stayed awake until 3 in the morning writing that algorithm. I remember him walking past my desk laughing at me. He told me I was wasting my time. He told me a glorified bookkeeper should stick to running spreadsheets. Now he is stealing my life work to save his collapsing career. He plans to present it to the board today. He plans to secure his senior partnership using the very code he used to mock. I hear another voice on the line. It is Gloria. She must be standing right next to him, leaning into the speakerphone. Her voice drips with the same toxic elitism she has weaponized against me for 5 years. "You hear that, Maya?" she sneers. "My son is a genius. He is taking your little typing project and turning it into a corporate asset. You have nothing left. You walked out of my house with nothing but the clothes on your back. You are just a typist from the South Side. DeAndre is the brilliant legal mind. You should be grateful he even let you live in our shadow for as long as you did. I let her venom wash over me. I let it settle into the floorboards of my temporary apartment. 5 years ago, her words would have shattered me. 5 years ago, I would have hung up the phone and cried until my eyes were swollen. But today I feel nothing but cold focus. They think they have trapped me. They think they have backed me into a corner and stripped me of my armor. They do not realize they just walked directly into a minefield. Enjoy your presentation, DeAndre, I say. My voice is eerily calm. It is the calm before a catastrophic storm. I tap the screen and end the call. I do not throw the phone. I do not scream. I turn around and walk toward my closet. It is time to get ready. It is time to shed the skin of the quiet, accommodating wife. I pull out a tailored charcoal gray suit. It is a power suit, the kind of suit that commands attention before you even speak a word. I put it on methodically. Every button I fasten is a boundary I am setting. Every fold I smooth out is a piece of my dignity I am reclaiming. I brush my hair back. I apply a sharp red lipstick. I look in the mirror. The woman looking back at me is not a victim. She is an architect of justice. I walk down the stairs of the apartment building. The cool Atlanta air hits my face. Pulling up to the curb is a sleek black town car. The tinted windows gleam in the afternoon sun. The driver steps out and opens the back door for me. This is not just any car. It was sent personally by Professor Harrison Sterling, the founding partner of Vanguard and Sterling, the man whose company DeAndre is currently trying to defraud. I slide into the plush leather seat. The doors close, shutting out the noise of the city. The driver merges into the heavy Atlanta traffic, heading straight for the financial district. I look out the window at the towering glass skyscrapers. For years, I let DeAndre make me feel small in this city. He paraded around in his custom suits, acting like he owned the streets while I stayed home and balanced the checkbooks. He told everyone I was just a lucky girl who married up. He convinced his entire social circle that I was a burden he generously carried. Today the truth comes out. Today the city will see exactly who carries who. The drive gives me time to reflect on the architecture of M-Trace. It is not just a tracking software. It is a living, breathing digital entity. I designed it to hunt down financial anomalies with microscopic precision. It is capable of tracing phantom funds across international borders in milliseconds. DeAndre thinks he can just plug it in and claim it as his own. He thinks code is just words on a screen. He does not understand that code has a fingerprint. It has a DNA sequence that points directly back to its creator. The town car pulls up to the towering glass and steel structure of Vanguard and Sterling. The building is an intimidating monument to corporate power. Lawyers in $1,000 suits rush through the revolving doors. I step out of the car. My heels click against the pavement with absolute certainty. I walk through the doors and approach the main security desk. The guards look up, ready to ask for my identification. Before they can speak, the head of security steps forward and nods respectfully. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you, Mrs. Williams," he says. He gestures toward the private executive elevator. I step into the elevator and press the button for the top floor. The ascent is smooth and silent. My heart beats in a steady, rhythmic rhythm. I am ascending to the top of DeAndre's world. The elevator doors glide open, revealing a sprawling reception area lined with modern art and marble floors. I walk past the executive assistants. They stare at me. They know who I am. They know I am DeAndre's wife, but they have never seen me look like this. I do not stop to chat. I walk straight down the long corridor toward the main boardroom. The boardroom walls are made of frosted glass. I can see the silhouettes of the board members sitting around the massive mahogany table. I can see DeAndre standing at the head of the room, waving a laser pointer at the projection screen. He is in his element. He is performing. I reach out and push the heavy glass doors open. The sound of the doors opening cuts through DeAndre's presentation. The entire room turns to look at me. There are 20 board members present. They are the most powerful legal and financial minds in Atlanta. Sitting at the absolute head of the table is Harrison Sterling. He is no longer wearing the rumpled suit from the airplane. He is wearing a pristine, tailored suit, looking every bit the ruthless chairman he is. DeAndre stops mid-sentence. The laser pointer drops from his hand and clatters onto the table. His mouth opens, but no sound comes out. The color drains from his face as he stares at me. Maya, he whispers. It is barely audible. He looks around the room, panic flaring in his eyes. He looks at the board members. He looks at Harrison. Then he regains a fraction of his false bravado. He points a shaking finger at me. Security, he demands, his voice cracking slightly. Someone call security right now. My soon-to-be ex-wife is trespassing. She has been unstable and she needs to be removed from the building immediately. I do not move. I stand tall at the entrance of the room. The board members murmur among themselves, confused by the interruption. DeAndre takes a step toward me, trying to physically intimidate me into leaving. Get out, Maya, he hisses under his breath. You are ruining everything. Before he can take another step, Harrison Sterling raises his hand. The entire room falls dead silent. Harrison looks at DeAndre, his expression completely unreadable. Sit down, DeAndre Harrison commands. His voice is low, but it carries an absolute authority that brooks no argument. DeAndre freezes. Sir, he stammers. She is trespassing. She has no security clearance to be on this floor. I invited her, Harrison says calmly. He gestures to an empty leather chair near the front of the table. Williams is here as an independent forensic auditor. She is here at my personal request to observe this highly anticipated presentation of yours. So please continue, DeAndre. Show us this revolutionary software you claim to have built. DeAndre looks like he might vomit. His eyes dart wildly between me and Harrison. He is trying to calculate the odds. He is trying to figure out how a glorified bookkeeper from the South Side managed to get a personal invitation from the billionaire chairman of his firm. He swallows hard, loosening his tie. He realizes he has no choice. He has to proceed. He has to prove that his software works. DeAndre turns back to the projector screen. He clears his throat, trying to regain his professional composure. As I was saying, he continues, his voice shaking slightly. This software, which I have personally developed over the last 2 years, is designed to track complex financial anomalies. It will save this firm millions in audit fees. I call it M-Trace. He says the name without a hint of irony. He literally stole the name I gave it. I sit in the leather chair, crossing my legs. I watch him dig his own grave. It is a fascinating process to witness. Let me demonstrate its power, DeAndre says. He walks over to the terminal connected to the main projector. He types in his login credentials. He is trying to project confidence, but his hands are trembling so badly he has to retype his password twice. I will run a live diagnostic on the firm's internal operational accounts, he explains to the board. In a matter of seconds, this algorithm will map out every transaction and flag any irregularities. The board members lean forward in their seats. They are genuinely interested. Harrison sits back, steepling his fingers, watching the screen intently. DeAndre takes a deep breath and hits the run button. The massive projector screen goes black for a fraction of a second. Then the loading bar appears. DeAndre smirks, looking back at me as if to say he has won. He actually believes the stolen code is going to work for him. He actually believes he has outsmarted me. The loading bar reaches 100%. Suddenly, the projector screen does not show a financial map. It does not show a successful diagnostic report. Instead, the entire wall-size screen flashes a blinding warning red. A loud, sharp error buzzer echoes through the boardroom speakers, making several board members jump in their seats. The red screen begins to flash rhythmically. Massive, bold white letters appear across the center of the display. Unauthorized user, creator Maya Williams. DeAndre stares at the screen. His mouth drops open in sheer horror. He lunges for the keyboard, frantically hitting the escape key. He is slamming his fingers against the keys, trying to close the window, trying to abort the process. Nothing happens. The biometric kill switch I coded into the foundational architecture of the software has been triggered. The moment the program detected a foreign administrative login, it locked down the entire terminal. The screen continues to flash. Unauthorized user. Creator Maya Williams. The board members begin to whisper loudly. They look from the screen to DeAndre, and then they look at me. Harrison Sterling leans forward, his eyes fixed on the flashing red warning. DeAndre is hyperventilating. "This is a glitch," he stammers, sweat pouring down his forehead. "It is a virus. She hacked my system. She must have infected the servers when she walked into the building." I stand up slowly. The room falls silent again, waiting for me to speak. I walk over to the projector screen, standing right next to the glowing red letters of my own name. "It is not a glitch, DeAndre." I say, my voice perfectly clear and steady. "It is a digital signature. You see, when a real software engineer builds a proprietary algorithmic tracking system, they do not just leave the front door open for thieves. They code a biometric lock into the deepest layer of the neural network. When you stole my laptop last night and copied the raw files, you thought you were taking the whole house. You did not realize you were only taking the wallpaper." DeAndre backs away from the terminal, his chest heaving. "You are lying," he shouts. "It is my software. I registered the LLC. I filed the paperwork." "Paperwork does not write code, DeAndre," I reply. I press a sequence of keys on my own phone. The projector screen shifts. The red warning fades away and is replaced by a highly detailed chronological coding log. It displays every single keystroke, every compilation, and every test run of the M-Trace software over the last 3 years. And every single entry is timestamped and biometrically tied to my personal development server. "This software belongs to me," I tell the board of directors. "My husband stole the prototype files from my personal server yesterday evening. He registered a fraudulent LLC this morning in a desperate attempt to present my intellectual property as his own. He brought a stolen Trojan horse into your highly secure corporate network." Harrison Sterling stands up. His presence dominates the room. He looks at DeAndre with absolute disgust. "You brought stolen software into my firm," Harrison asks, his voice dangerously low. "You attempted to defraud this board of directors to secure a partnership." DeAndre falls to his knees. The sharp, expensive suit means nothing now. He is a broken, pathetic man begging for mercy in front of the most powerful people in his industry. "Mr. Sterling, please," he cries. "I was under a lot of pressure. She is my wife. Technically, her assets belong to me. We can fix this." "There is no fixing this," DeAndre Harrison says. He presses a button on the intercom, sitting on the mahogany table. "Security, come to the main boardroom immediately. We have an associate who needs to be escorted off the premises, and contact the local authorities to report a case of intellectual property theft." DeAndre puts his head in his hands, sobbing loudly. The brilliant legal mind, the arrogant golden boy who told me I was just a typist, is currently weeping on the carpet. I look down at him and feel absolutely nothing. The repetitive cycle of his emotional abuse has been completely neutralized. He wanted to steal my crown and present it to the world, but he forgot that the crown was forged in a fire he could not survive. The guards grab DeAndre by his arms, lifting him off the plush carpet. He struggles against their grip, his expensive leather shoes scrambling for traction. "Maya, please," he begs, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Please tell them to stop. Do not do this to me. I am your husband." I stand there with my hands folded neatly in front of me. "You stopped being my husband the day you decided my brilliance was a threat to your fragile ego," I say quietly. "You told me I would leave this marriage with nothing but a rusted car. You were wrong. I am leaving with my dignity, my intellectual property, and your entire career." The guards pull him through the heavy glass doors. His cries echo down the marble hallway until the elevator doors slide shut, cutting him off completely. The boardroom is silent. 20 powerful executives are staring at me. Harrison Sterling smiles. He gestures to the empty chair at the head of the table. "Please, Mrs. Williams," he says. "Have a seat. We have a lot of business to discuss." I remain standing in the center of the glass-walled boardroom. The empty leather chair at the head of the mahogany table is tempting, but my work here is not quite finished. I look at Harrison Sterling. He is watching me with a mixture of intense curiosity and profound respect. The other board members are still reeling from the shock of DeAndre's sudden arrest and removal. The flashing red warning on the giant projector screen continues to bathe the room in a harsh crimson light. Unauthorized user. Creator Maya Williams. The words reflect off the polished glass walls of the boardroom like a beacon of absolute justice. Harrison gestures toward the terminal. "What happens now, Mrs. Williams?" he asks. His voice cuts through the low murmur of the confused executives. I walk slowly back to the keyboard. "Now, Mr. Sterling," I reply, "I show you exactly why my software is worth more than every associate in your firm combined. I told DeAndre that my code had a biometric lock. What I did not tell him is what happens when someone tries to break that lock." I place my fingers on the keyboard. I do not need to look down. My muscle memory takes over. I type a complex bypass code. It is a sequence of 72 keystrokes that I memorized months ago for this exact moment. The flashing red warning disappears. The projector screen goes completely black. For a few seconds, the boardroom is plunged into darkness. Then a single white cursor blinks in the top left corner of the screen. A soft mechanical hum echoes from the terminal as the system reboots. But it is not booting up the standard M-Trace diagnostic. It is initiating a highly classified background protocol. I call it the Trojan horse. When DeAndre copied the raw files from my personal server, he thought he was stealing a passive tracking algorithm. He thought he was stealing a glorified calculator. He did not realize that the code was designed to be parasitic. The moment he installed it onto the Vanguard and Sterling mainframes and entered his own administrative credentials, the Trojan horse latched onto his digital footprint. It bypassed the firm firewalls and burrowed directly into his personal network. It mapped his entire financial existence in a matter of milliseconds. The screen flashes bright white. A series of complex data trees begin to bloom across the projection. The board members gasp collectively. They are witnessing a live financial autopsy. The algorithm is currently auto-tracing the Internet Protocol address of the user who initiated the unauthorized transfer, I explained to the silent room. It is pulling every single transaction, every hidden ledger, and every encrypted wire transfer linked to DeAndre's social security number and corporate accounts. The data trees on the screen begin to organize themselves into clear, readable charts. The numbers are staggering. Columns of illicit transactions scroll past at lightning speed. Harrison stands up and walks closer to the screen, his eyes narrowing as he reads the data. "What exactly are we looking at, Maya?" he asks. His tone is deadly serious. "You are looking at continuous corporate embezzlement, Mr. Sterling," I reply. I point to a cluster of red data points expanding on the left side of the screen. "Over the past 18 months, DeAndre has been siphoning funds from your firm settlement escrow accounts. He created a network of dummy corporations to disguise the theft." I type another command into the terminal. The screen zooms in on a specific web of transactions. "You can see here," I continue, "that he routed the stolen money through 3 different offshore shell companies located in the Cayman Islands. He disguised the transfers as international legal consulting fees. It is the exact same laundering technique we found on your airplane spreadsheet, but executed on a much smaller, more desperate scale." The board members begin to shout over each other. They are outraged. They are pulling out their phones and demanding answers from their risk management officers. Harrison slams his hand on the table, demanding silence. He turns back to the screen. "Where is the money going?" he demands. I hit the enter key. The data tree branches out further, revealing the final destination of the laundered funds. "It did not go to a savings account," I explain. "It did not go to mutual funds. It went directly to a series of high-end luxury boutiques, real estate holding companies, and exotic car dealerships." I pull up a specific ledger. "This column represents the lifestyle of his mistress," I say. The numbers are undeniable. $80,000 for a sports car. $40,000 for designer jewelry. $10,000 a month for a luxury penthouse apartment leased under a fake name. He was stealing from your clients to fund a secret life while simultaneously threatening to leave me with absolutely nothing. The door to the boardroom bursts open. It is DeAndre. He has broken free from the security guards in the hallway. His suit jacket is torn and his tie is gone. He looks like a wild animal cornered and desperate. The guards rush in right behind him, but Harrison holds up a hand signaling them to wait. DeAndre stares at the massive projector screen. He sees his entire criminal enterprise laid bare in front of the most powerful people in Atlanta. He sees the offshore accounts. He sees the dummy corporations. He sees the payments to his mistress. The blood drains from his face. He falls to his knees right in the middle of the boardroom. "Maya, please," he begs, his voice cracking. "Please shut it off. It is a mistake. It is a glitch in your code. You have to believe me." I look down at him. The man who spent 5 years telling me I was worthless is now kneeling on the floor begging for his life. I feel no pity. I feel no remorse. I feel nothing but absolute clarity. "Code does not lie, DeAndre," I say softly. "Numbers do not have egos. They do not have pride. They only tell the truth. And the truth is that you are a thief. You built a house of cards on top of my brilliance, and now the wind is blowing." DeAndre turns to Harrison. He clasps his hands together in a pathetic display of submission. "Mr. Sterling, please," he cries. "I can fix this. I can pay the money back. Do not ruin my life over a glitch. I am a senior associate. I have dedicated my life to this firm." Harrison looks at DeAndre with a mixture of pity and absolute disgust. "You have dedicated your life to your own greed," DeAndre Harrison says. "You stole from my firm. You stole from my clients. And you tried to steal from your own wife. You are a disgrace to the legal profession." Harrison turns to the head of security, who is standing near the door. "Call the Federal Bureau of Investigation immediately," Harrison orders. "Tell them we have a live case of corporate embezzlement and wire fraud. Lock down the entire building. No one leaves until the feds arrive." DeAndre collapses onto his stomach, sobbing uncontrollably. The sound of his weeping echoes in the large glass room. The board members watch him in silence. The golden boy of the firm has been completely destroyed. I step away from the terminal. My work is done. The Trojan horse has executed its primary directive. The trap has been sprung and the prey has been caught. I walk over to the empty leather chair at the head of the table and finally sit down. The leather is cool and firm. It feels like victory. We wait in silence for 15 minutes. The only sound in the room is DeAndre's pathetic sniffling and the soft hum of the projector. Harrison sits next to me, reviewing the data on the screen with intense fascination. He asks me quiet questions about the coding architecture and the tracing algorithms. I answer him with professional precision. We speak as equals. The heavy glass doors of the boardroom open again. 4 agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation walk into the room. They are wearing dark suits and carrying official badges. The lead agent steps forward and surveys the scene. He looks at DeAndre crying on the floor and then looks at Harrison. "We received a call about massive wire fraud," the agent says. Harrison stands up and points to the projector screen. "The evidence is all there," Agent Harrison says. "Mr. DeAndre Williams has embezzled millions of dollars from our corporate escrow accounts. The algorithmic trace provides a complete and undeniable paper trail of his illicit activities." 2 agents walk over to DeAndre. They grab him by the arms and haul him to his feet. They pull his hands behind his back. The sharp metallic click of the handcuffs echoes through the silent boardroom. It is the sound of absolute justice. DeAndre does not fight them. He is completely broken. He hangs his head in shame as they begin to read him his Miranda rights. But the algorithm is not finished. The Trojan horse was designed to trace every single branch of the financial tree. It was designed to hunt down every single accomplice. As the agents are turning to lead DeAndre out of the room, the massive projector screen suddenly flashes yellow. A secondary alarm chimes through the speakers. The high-pitched sound makes everyone stop in their tracks. The federal agents pause, looking back at the screen. Harrison turns to me, his brow furrowed. "What is that, Mrs. Williams?" he asks. I stand up and walk back to the terminal. I type a quick command to maximize the new alert window. My eyes scan the raw data pouring across the screen. I cannot help but smile. The poetic justice of this moment is almost too perfect to believe. It is a live alert, I tell the room. The software is pinging a secondary security breach. Someone is currently trying to access DeAndre's offshore accounts. Someone is trying to drain the Cayman Island shell companies before the federal authorities can freeze the assets. The lead agent steps closer to the screen. "Can you trace the origin of the unauthorized access?" he asks. I nod. I type another sequence of commands. The algorithm bypasses the virtual private network being used to mask the identity of the user. The data tree expands once more, revealing the physical location and the registered identity of the person attempting the massive illegal wire transfer. The name flashes in bold white letters across the center of the yellow screen. Gloria Williams. DeAndre's head snaps up. He stares at his mother's name on the screen in absolute disbelief. "My mother," he whispers, his voice trembling. "What is she doing?" "She is trying to steal your stolen money, DeAndre," I say. I look at the agents. Gloria Williams is DeAndre's mother. She must have had access to his secondary security tokens. The moment she realized her son was going down, she decided to secure her own financial future by draining his illicit funds. She is currently attempting to wire $2 million from a frozen corporate account directly into a private, untraceable offshore trust. The lead agent pulls a radio from his belt. He speaks rapidly into the device, relaying the new information and ordering an immediate dispatch to Gloria's residential address. The secondary alert is a federal offense: attempted wire fraud and tampering with evidence in an active federal investigation. Gloria thought she was untouchable. She thought her proximity to wealth and power made her immune to consequences. She spent years calling me a charity case while secretly living off the money her son stole from his employer. And now, in her desperate attempt to maintain her lavish lifestyle, she has walked directly into a federal trap. DeAndre begins to hyperventilate. The reality of the situation is finally crashing down on him. His career is over. His freedom is gone. And now his mother is going to federal prison right alongside him. He looks at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe. "You planned this," he whispers. "You planned all of this." I look at him coldly. "I did not make you steal, DeAndre," I reply. "I did not make your mother attempt to commit wire fraud. I simply turned on the lights so everyone could see exactly who you are in the dark." The agents yank on DeAndre's handcuffs, pulling him toward the door. He stumbles forward, his expensive shoes dragging across the floor. He does not look back again. The doors close behind him, shutting him out of my life forever. I stand in the center of the boardroom. The yellow alert continues to pulse on the screen behind me. The data tree remains a glowing testament to my brilliance and their corruption. Harrison Sterling walks over to me. He does not look at the door where DeAndre just exited. He looks only at me. "Mrs. Williams," Harrison says, his voice filled with profound respect. "I have been in the corporate legal world for 40 years. I have seen hostile takeovers. I have seen ruthless litigations. But I have never seen a tactical execution quite as brilliant as the one I just witnessed today. You did not just catch a thief. You completely dismantled his entire network in real time." I nod, acknowledging the compliment. "I told you, Mr. Sterling," I reply. "I am not just a bookkeeper." Harrison smiles. "No, you are certainly not." He gestures to the empty chair at the head of the table. "Please, Mrs. Williams, sit down. As I said earlier, we have a lot of business to discuss." The business Harrison Sterling and I discussed in the boardroom was brief but devastatingly effective. We signed the necessary affidavits to authorize a full federal investigation into DeAndre's financial activities within the firm. Harrison arranged for his personal security team to escort me to the downtown Atlanta police precinct so I could file the formal intellectual property theft report. The ride in the town car was quiet. I watched the city blur past the tinted windows, feeling a profound sense of closure beginning to take root in my chest. The heavy lifting was done. The algorithm had worked flawlessly. Now it was just a matter of processing the paperwork. I arrived at the precinct and was immediately directed to the Financial Crimes Division. The environment was a stark contrast to the luxurious glass walls of Vanguard and Sterling. The police station smelled of stale coffee and industrial floor cleaner. The fluorescent lights hummed with an irritating buzz. I sat across a scratched metal desk from a tired-looking detective named Hendricks. I spent the next hour walking him through the massive stack of digital logs I had printed from the boardroom terminal. I explained the architecture of the M-Trace software and how DeAndre had illegally copied the proprietary code from my personal development server. I showed him the time-stamped access logs, proving that my husband had bypassed the firewall and stolen my intellectual property in a desperate bid to secure his corporate partnership. Detective Hendricks took meticulous notes. He was thoroughly impressed by the biometric kill switch I had coded into the system. He told me the Federal Bureau of Investigation was already processing DeAndre at a federal holding facility across town. My soon-to-be ex-husband was facing decades in federal prison for the corporate embezzlement alone. The intellectual property theft was just the final nail in his coffin. As I was signing the last page of my official statement, a loud commotion erupted in the main lobby of the precinct. The heavy double doors were thrown open with such force that they banged loudly against the adjacent walls. I did not even need to turn around to know who had just arrived. The shrill, entitled voice echoing through the sterile police station belonged to only one person. It was Gloria. She was screaming at the top of her lungs, demanding to speak with the chief of police immediately. She was throwing her weight around, using her elite social status as a weapon against the desk sergeants. "Do you have any idea who I am?" she shrieked, her voice carrying all the way back to the Financial Crimes Division. "My son is a senior attorney at Vanguard and Sterling. You have made a catastrophic mistake arresting him. I demand that you release him into my custody this instant." I slowly turned around in my hard plastic chair. Gloria was storming past the security barriers, waving a designer handbag frantically in the air. Her hair was a mess, and her face was flushed with frantic rage. She spotted me sitting at the detective's desk, and her entire demeanor shifted from panic to absolute fury. She marched across the precinct floor, her expensive heels clicking aggressively against the linoleum. She bypassed two uniformed officers who tried to stop her and marched directly up to the metal desk where I was sitting. Gloria pointed a shaking, manicured finger right at my face. "You," she hissed, her voice trembling with venom. "You did this. You set up my son. I knew you were a snake from the very beginning." I stood up slowly, smoothing the wrinkles out of my charcoal gray suit. I looked her directly in the eye. "I did not set him up, Gloria," I replied evenly. "Your son built his own cage. I just happened to be the one who locked the door." Gloria slammed her hands down on the metal desk, scattering some of my printed reports. She leaned in close, trying to intimidate me with her proximity. "You are nothing," she spat. "You are a manipulative little gold digger. I told DeAndre he was making the biggest mistake of his life marrying you. I knew I should not have let my son marry a fatherless girl from the projects. You people are all the same. You come from nothing, and you try to steal from families who have worked hard to build their wealth. You are just a resentful, jealous girl who could not handle being married to a brilliant man." Her words hung in the stale air of the police station. 5 years ago, a comment like that would have made me shrink into myself. 5 years ago, I would have internalized her classist, racist insults and wondered if she was right. I would have looked at my background growing up in a single-parent household in a low-income neighborhood and felt ashamed. Gloria had spent my entire marriage using my past as a weapon against me. She used to host lavish dinner parties at her estate and introduce me to her wealthy friends as DeAndre's little charity project. She would make passive-aggressive comments about my natural hair or my lack of designer clothes. She constantly reminded me that I did not belong in her world. She loved to make me feel small so she could feel enormous. But standing there in the police precinct, looking at this desperate, panicked woman, I realized that her world was nothing but a cheap illusion built on stolen money. Her entire identity was a fabrication funded by the very crimes her son was currently being booked for. I stared her down coldly. My expression did not waver. I did not raise my voice or give her the reaction she so desperately wanted. "You love talking about where I come from, Gloria," I said, my voice steady and quiet. "You love using the projects as an insult. You think growing up without a father makes me inferior to you. But let me tell you something about the people from my neighborhood. They might not have much money, but they have loyalty. They have community. And most importantly, they have a conscience." I took a step closer to her, invading her space the way she had just invaded mine. "At least this girl from the projects did not use church charity funds to buy a Birkin bag," I said softly. The color drained from Gloria's face so fast, she looked like she might pass out. Her mouth opened but no words came out. She took a stumbling step backward, her manicured hand flying up to touch her chest. The arrogant fire in her eyes was instantly extinguished and replaced by sheer, paralyzing terror. How do you know about that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the fluorescent lights. "I know everything, Gloria," I replied. I reached down to the desk and picked up a specific sheet of paper from the stack of printed logs. It was the screenshot of the yellow secondary alert that the M-Trace software had generated in the boardroom just an hour ago. The alert that triggered when she tried to illegally wire $2 million out of DeAndre's frozen accounts. "I know that for the past 3 years, you have been the treasurer of the community outreach program at your church," I continued. "I know that you used your son's offshore shell companies to siphon hundreds of thousands of dollars away from the community food bank and the after-school programs. You set up fake charity drives to collect donations from hardworking families, and then you funneled that money directly into your own pockets. You stole from your own congregation to fund your country club memberships, your luxury vacations, and your designer wardrobe. And I know that less than 2 hours ago, you attempted to commit federal wire fraud by trying to transfer $2 million of DeAndre's stolen money into an untraceable account in the Bahamas." Gloria began to shake uncontrollably. She looked around the police station, suddenly hyper-aware of the uniformed officers and detectives standing nearby. She tried to compose herself, trying to put the mask of the untouchable wealthy matriarch back on. "You cannot prove any of that," she stammered, gripping her designer bag tightly. Her voice was losing its strength, turning into a desperate plea. "It is your word against mine. You are just a vindictive ex-wife making up lies to hurt my family. I will call Sarah right now. Her family lawyers will destroy you for this slander. You have no evidence." I did not respond to her empty threats. I did not need to argue with a woman who was already drowning. Instead, I turned to Detective Hendricks, who had been sitting quietly at his desk, observing the entire interaction. I slid the printed screenshot of the M-Trace alert across the metal desk, placing it directly in front of him. "Detective," I said professionally, "this document details a live federal wire fraud attempt that occurred at exactly 2:14 this afternoon. It includes the originating internet protocol, address, the routing numbers, and the digital signature authorizing the transfer. The signature belongs to Gloria Williams." Detective Hendricks picked up the paper. He read over the data points, tracing the routing numbers with his pen. His eyes widened as he verified the amounts and the destination accounts. His demeanor shifted instantly from a passive observer to an active law enforcement officer. He stood up from his chair, pushing it back so it scraped loudly against the linoleum floor. He walked around the metal desk and approached Gloria. "Ma'am," Detective Hendricks said, his voice firm and authoritative, "I am going to need you to place your hands behind your back." Gloria shrieked loudly. The sound bounced off the concrete walls of the precinct, making several officers turn their heads. "You cannot be serious," she cried, backing away from the detective. "Do you know who I am? I am a respected member of this community. I sit on the board of the Historical Society. You cannot arrest me based on a piece of paper handed to you by this lying girl. I demand to make a phone call. I demand to speak to my lawyer." The detective did not hesitate. He reached out and grabbed Gloria's arms, spinning her around and forcing her hands behind her back. "Gloria Williams, you are under arrest for suspicion of wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. he stated calmly as he pulled a pair of heavy metal handcuffs from his belt. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. The metallic click of the handcuffs locking around Gloria's wrists was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a generational curse being broken. It was the sound of absolute, undeniable accountability. Gloria struggled against the detective's grip, screaming hysterically about her rights and her social standing. She was completely unhinged, thrashing wildly, as the reality of her situation finally breached her profound sense of entitlement. As she thrashed against the restraints, the strap of her designer handbag caught on the edge of the metal desk. She jerked away, and the sudden movement caused the heavy pearl necklace around her neck to snap under the tension. The string broke and dozens of large pearls cascaded down the front of her expensive dress. They hit the linoleum floor, bouncing and rolling in every direction. The pearls scattered across the precinct floor, clattering against the boots of the police officers who were coming over to assist Detective Hendricks. Gloria looked down at the rolling pearls, sobbing uncontrollably. Her entire world had just collapsed. The untouchable matriarch was now a common criminal standing in a police precinct in handcuffs. I watched her weeping, surrounded by the broken pieces of her jewelry. I looked closely at the pearls resting on the floor and noticed the chipped paint on their surface. They were not even real pearls. They were heavy glass beads painted to look like luxury. It was the perfect metaphor for her entire existence. An imitation of wealth held together by a fragile string of lies. I felt absolutely no sympathy for her. She had spent years trying to break me down, and in the end she had destroyed herself. You should have just let me take the rusted Honda. Gloria, I said quietly as the officers began to drag her away toward the holding cells. You and your son always had to be the smartest people in the room. You thought you could crush me and walk away rich. Now you can both be the smartest people in the federal penitentiary. Gloria continued to scream my name, cursing me as she was pulled down the long cinderblock hallway. Her voice grew fainter and fainter until the heavy metal security door slammed shut, cutting her off completely. The precinct returned to its normal state of chaotic, bureaucratic noise. I looked down at the few fake pearls resting near my feet. I nudged one with the toe of my shoe, watching it roll away into a dusty corner of the room. The matriarch of the Williams family had finally fallen, and the empire of lies she had built was reduced to nothing but cheap plastic beads on a dirty floor. I turned back to the desk and picked up my purse. My statement was filed. The evidence was delivered. The Trojan horse had taken down both the king and the queen. It was time to leave the precinct and face whatever remained of the fractured family I had just dismantled. I walked out of the precinct, and the Atlanta air felt entirely different. It was no longer heavy with the suffocating expectations of my in-laws. The news of the arrests moved through the city faster than a wildfire. In the affluent circles of Buckhead and the exclusive country clubs, the Williams family name had always been a golden ticket. Gloria had spent decades cultivating an image of absolute perfection. She hosted charity galas and sat on the advisory boards of the most prestigious organizations. But in the world of the elite, reputation is a fragile glass house. The moment the local news story of a senior corporate attorney and a prominent church treasurer being indicted for federal wire fraud, the glass shattered completely. I spent the next 3 days watching the dominoes fall from the quiet sanctuary of my temporary apartment. The church board held an emergency meeting and publicly severed all ties with Gloria. They released a statement condemning her embezzlement of community funds. Her country club membership was revoked before she even made bail. Deandra's face was plastered across every legal blog and local news channel. The golden boy of Vanguard and Sterling was now the poster child for corporate greed. Their entire social circle turned their backs on them instantly. People who had drank their champagne and attended their lavish parties suddenly claimed they barely knew them. It was a brutal display of how conditional high society loyalty truly is. I felt no sympathy. I was too busy preparing for my next move. Harrison Sterling had set me up with a temporary private office on the executive floor of his firm while we finalized the details of my new position. It was a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the very city DeAndre used to claim he ruled. I was sitting at my mahogany desk, reviewing the latest forensic data dumps when the intercom on my desk buzzed. The security desk in the main lobby was calling. The head guard sounded tense. He told me there was a man in the lobby demanding to see me. He said the man was highly agitated and claiming to be my brother-in-law. I knew exactly who it was. I told security to send him up. I wanted to see the wreckage up close. I wanted to see what remained of the arrogant freeloader who had tried to physically attack me just days prior. The heavy glass doors of my office opened, and Jamal walked in. The sight of him was almost jarring. The last time I saw Jamal, he was dripping in designer brands funded by his wife's family wealth. He used to walk with a swagger that demanded everyone clear a path for him. He called himself a visionary entrepreneur, even though he had never worked a real job in his adult life. The man standing in front of me now looked like a hollow shell. His clothes were wrinkled and stained. His eyes were bloodshot and darting frantically around the luxurious office. He had not shaved in days and his hands were trembling. He looked exactly like a man who had just realized he was completely powerless. "Maya," he said, his voice cracking as he stepped toward my desk. The usual arrogance was entirely gone, replaced by a desperate, pathetic whine. I did not stand up to greet him. I leaned back in my leather chair and folded my hands, resting them on the polished wood of the desk. I let the silence stretch out, forcing him to squirm under my gaze. I wanted him to feel the heavy weight of the shift in our power dynamic. "You look terrible, Jamal," I finally said. My voice was calm and flat, showing zero emotion. "I suppose the life of a starving artist is not quite as glamorous when you are actually starving." Jamal swallowed hard, ignoring the insult. He stumbled forward and collapsed into one of the chairs opposite my desk. "Sarah kicked me out," he blurted out, running a shaking hand over his face. "She filed for divorce yesterday. Her family lawyers moved so fast, Maya. They locked me out of the estate. They froze every single joint credit card. My car was leased under her family trust, and they sent a repo man to take it right out of the driveway. I have nothing. They took my phone plan off their corporate account. I had to walk here from the train station." I watched him unravel. Sarah was a woman born into old white money. She loved playing the liberal savior to a black artist husband. But the moment she realized Jamal was a common thief who had embezzled $3 million from her own family trust, the savior complex evaporated. Her family mobilized their generational wealth to crush him like an insect. They were currently burying him in emergency injunctions and asset seizures to protect themselves from the federal fallout of his crimes. "She realized you were a liability," I said quietly. "She realized you were never a tortured genius, Jamal. You were just a parasite feeding off her privilege, and now the host has cut you off. You have to help me, Maya," he begged, leaning over the desk. His eyes were wide and pleading. "The Federal Bureau of Investigation has been calling me. They want to bring me in for questioning regarding the trust fund embezzlement. Sarah's family is throwing me to the wolves. They are telling the feds I acted entirely alone. They are trying to say I masterminded the whole thing without DeAndre's help. I cannot afford a defense attorney. I cannot even afford a hotel room for tonight. You have all the money now, Maya. You have the patents and the software. You have to give me a loan, just enough to retain legal counsel." I stared at him, letting his words hang in the air. The sheer audacity of his request was staggering. He had spent 5 years treating me like dirt beneath his shoes. He had stood by and laughed while his mother called me a charity case from the projects. He had helped his brother steal my proprietary software. He had literally raised his hand to strike me in my own apartment when I exposed his theft. And now he was sitting in my office begging for a handout from the very wealth he tried to steal. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the desk. I looked deeply into his panicked, bloodshot eyes. "You want a loan?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You come into my office after plotting to frame me for your own financial crimes, and you ask me for a loan. You stood in my apartment and agreed with your wife when she said I would make the perfect scapegoat because no one would believe a poor black girl over her rich white family. You watched DeAndre abuse me emotionally and financially for half a decade, and you did nothing but cheer him on. We are family, Maya." Jamal cried out, tears actually welling up in his eyes. Despite everything, we are family. You cannot just let me go to federal prison. You cannot just leave me on the street. Family is an action, Jamal, I stated coldly. Family is not an entitlement. Family is not a free pass to abuse someone and then demand their protection when your actions catch up to you. You made your choices. You chose to be a thief. You chose to ride the coattails of your brother's corruption and your wife's money. I owe you absolutely nothing. I am not giving you a single dime to save yourself from the consequences of your own greed. Jamal let out a choked sob. He gripped the edge of my desk, his knuckles turning white. If I go down, I am taking everyone with me. He threatened, his voice turning bitter and sharp. His desperation was making him reckless. If the feds corner me, I will tell them everything I know about DeAndre's operations. That is not a threat to me, Jamal, I replied, leaning back again. DeAndre is already in a federal holding cell. The software mapped his entire digital footprint. The prosecution has everything they need to put him away for 20 years. Your testimony is useless. You have no leverage. You have nothing to offer them, and you have nothing to offer me. The door is behind you. Security will escort you out. I reached for the phone on my desk to call the lobby. Jamal's panic reached a boiling point. Wait, he shouted, reaching out as if to stop my hand. Wait, Maya, please listen to me. The software traced the digital money right. It traced the offshore accounts and the wire transfers. But DeAndre and my mother are old school in some ways. They did not trust everything to the cloud. They kept physical records. My hand paused over the phone receiver. I looked at Jamal, assessing whether he was lying to save his own skin. What kind of physical records? I asked. Jamal swallowed hard, his chest heaving with nervous breaths. Handwritten ledgers, he whispered, looking over his shoulder, as if he thought someone might be listening at the glass doors. Passwords for the encrypted dark web accounts, where DeAndre hid the untraceable cryptocurrency. Account numbers for safety deposit boxes in Switzerland that your software could not ping because they are not connected to the main corporate network. My mother kept them. She kept physical copies of everything just in case the servers were ever seized. Where are they? I asked, keeping my voice perfectly level. They are hidden in my mother's house, Jamal said, wiping the sweat from his forehead. In the basement behind the wine cellar wall, there is a hidden floor safe. The feds have not raided her house yet because they are focusing on the corporate offices and the digital evidence. But the physical ledgers are there. They prove that my mother was not just an accomplice who tried to wire $2 million at the last minute. They prove she was the one who orchestrated the church embezzlement from the very beginning. They prove DeAndre was hiding an additional $10 million that your algorithm has not found yet. I studied his face. He was offering up his own mother and his own brother on a silver platter. He was willing to hand over the final nails for their coffins just to secure a plea deal for himself. It was the ultimate betrayal. The family that prided itself on loyalty and superiority was now eating itself alive to survive. It was a pathetic, disgusting display of cowardice, but it was exactly what I needed to ensure that neither DeAndre nor Gloria would ever see the outside of a prison cell again. What do you want for this information? I asked. Jamal leaned forward, his eyes wide with desperate hope. I will tell you exactly how to access the safe. I will give you the combination. You can hand the physical ledgers over to the federal prosecutors. All I want in return is for you to introduce me to Harrison Sterling's defense attorneys. I want you to pay their retainer fee. Just enough to get me a plea deal with the feds, so I avoid serving time in a maximum security facility. I will wear a wire. I will testify against my mother and my brother in open court. Just keep me out of federal prison, Maya. Please. I sat in silence, weighing his offer. Giving Jamal a single dollar went against every instinct in my body. But the tactical advantage of securing the physical ledgers was undeniable. Obtaining the cryptographic keys and the Swiss bank account numbers would ensure the complete and total financial annihilation of DeAndre and Gloria. It would guarantee that when they eventually got out of prison, they would have absolutely nothing waiting for them. No hidden funds, no secret safety deposit boxes, complete and utter ruin. And watching Jamal take the witness stand to testify against his own mother would be the final poetic justice for a family that had spent years trying to destroy me. I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out a blank notepad and a pen. I slid them across the polished mahogany toward him. Write down the exact location of the safe, I commanded. Write down the combination and the details of every physical ledger hidden inside it. Jamal grabbed the pen, his hands shaking so violently he could barely form the letters. He wrote frantically, filling the page with directions, access codes, and combinations. He wrote down the names of the banks in Switzerland and the details of the dark web wallets. He was selling out his bloodline as fast as he could write. When he finished, he pushed the notepad back across the desk toward me. He looked at me like a dog waiting for a scrap of meat. I took the notepad and reviewed the information. It was highly detailed and specific. It was the map to the final treasure trove of their corruption. I folded the paper and placed it securely in my suit pocket. I will make a call to a defense attorney, I told him. I will pay the initial retainer fee required to secure your plea deal negotiations with the federal prosecutors. But make no mistake, Jamal, this is a transaction, not a favor. You will testify against Gloria. You will testify against DeAndre. You will admit to your role in the trust fund embezzlement, and you will likely still serve time in a minimum security facility. I am not buying your freedom. I am simply buying your betrayal. Jamal nodded rapidly, tears spilling over his eyelashes. Thank you, he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. Thank you, Maya. I will do whatever they ask. I promise. Get out of my office, Jamal. I said, my voice cold and absolute. You have your deal. Now get out of my sight and do not ever approach me again. He scrambled out of the chair, stumbling backward toward the door. He did not say another word. He just turned and fled the office, leaving the heavy glass doors swinging behind him. I watched him walk down the hallway, a broken, ruined man heading back out into a city that no longer had a place for him. He had come seeking a handout and left having sold his soul. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the lead federal agent handling DeAndre's case. The phone rang twice before the agent answered. Mrs. Williams, the agent said, sounding surprised. We are still processing the digital evidence you provided. Is there something else we need to discuss? Yes, agent, I replied, leaning back in my chair and looking out over the Buckhead skyline. I have some new information regarding the physical ledgers and the offshore cryptocurrency wallets managed by Gloria and DeAndre Williams. I strongly suggest you secure a search warrant for the matriarch's residential basement. I have the exact location and combination for a hidden floor safe that you are going to want to open today. I ended the call and set the phone down on the desk. The dominoes were continuing to fall and the crash was deafening. The fractured empire of the Williams family was now collapsing from the inside out, brought down by their own greed and their absolute lack of loyalty to one another. I had not just leveled the playing field, I had completely destroyed it. The silence in my temporary office was a welcome change from the chaos of the past few days. I sat across the polished mahogany table from my divorce attorney, a sharp-minded man named Calvin, who had been highly recommended by Harrison Sterling himself. The paperwork spread out between us was the final step in completely severing my ties to DeAndre. The division of assets was no longer a negotiation. It was an absolute slaughter. Because DeAndre was currently sitting in a federal holding cell facing decades for corporate embezzlement, his legal standing in our divorce was entirely non-existent. The ironclad prenuptial agreement he had arrogantly forced me to sign 5 years ago contained a very specific morality clause. He thought that clause would keep me in line, but my software had provided indisputable proof of his financial infidelity. The trap he built for me had become his own financial grave. Calvin was just explaining how quickly the judge would expedite the transfer of the Buckhead mansion into my name when his office phone rang. Calvin answered the call and his brow furrowed. He looked at me with a mixture of confusion and professional concern. He placed the receiver down and folded his hands on the desk. There is a young woman in the reception area, he said quietly. She is demanding to see you immediately. She says her name is Chloe, and that she possesses sensitive materials regarding your husband that you will want to purchase before they go public. The sheer audacity of the request made me let out a soft laugh. Chloe was DeAndre's mistress. She was the woman who had been living in a luxury penthouse leased under a fake corporate name, funded entirely by stolen money. I had seen her face on the digital ledgers my software produced. She was a 20-something aspiring influencer who thought she had secured a wealthy corporate lawyer to fund her lavish lifestyle. She had no idea that her sugar daddy was currently wearing an orange jumpsuit and eating county jail food. "Send her in," I told Calvin. "This should be incredibly entertaining." Calvin nodded and pressed the intercom button on his desk. A moment later, the heavy wooden door to the office swung open. Chloe walked in, and the atmosphere in the room instantly shifted. She was trying very hard to project an image of untouchable wealth, but the cracks in her facade were glaringly obvious. She was wearing a designer trench coat and holding a crocodile skin handbag that I knew for a fact cost more than $20,000. But her eyes were frantic and her hands were trembling slightly as she clutched the expensive bag to her chest. She looked at me sitting calmly in my tailored suit, and her expression twisted into a sneer. She expected to find a weeping, broken woman. She expected to find the naive little wife that DeAndre had undoubtedly described to her during their secret hotel meetings. Instead, she found the architect of his total destruction. Chloe did not wait to be offered a seat. She marched right up to the mahogany desk and glared down at me. "I know what you are doing to DeAndre," she said, her voice shrill and desperate. "I know you froze all of his bank accounts and locked him out of his own money. You think you are so smart, but you are just a bitter, jealous woman trying to ruin a man who stopped loving you years ago." I did not raise my voice. I took a slow sip of my coffee and set the porcelain cup down on its saucer. The clinking sound echoed loudly in the quiet office. "I did not freeze his accounts, Chloe," I replied evenly. "The Federal Bureau of Investigation froze his accounts because the money in them was stolen. Your wealthy boyfriend is a common thief, and right now he is looking at a minimum of 20 years in federal prison." Chloe's eyes darted nervously toward Calvin and then back to me. She swallowed hard, trying to maintain her aggressive posture. "That is a lie," she snapped. "DeAndre is a genius. He is a senior partner. He told me the transfer of the Buckhead mansion into my name was going to be finalized this week. We were supposed to move in together as soon as he dumped you. You are just trying to steal the house because you know he wants me instead." The delusion was almost sad to witness. She had built her entire future on the promises of a pathological liar. She truly believed that she was the winner of some grand prize. She did not understand that the prize was a sinking ship and she was currently chained to the anchor. "You can stop pretending, Chloe," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I saw the financial ledgers. I know exactly how much stolen money he funneled into your bank accounts to pay for that designer coat and that luxury penthouse. You did not win a billionaire, Chloe. You won a liability. And now that his assets are seized, you are suddenly realizing that the lavish lifestyle he promised you is completely dead." Chloe's face turned an ugly shade of red. Her desperation was boiling over into reckless anger. She reached into her expensive handbag and pulled out a small silver flash drive. She slammed it down onto the polished wood of the desk right on top of my divorce paperwork. "You want to play hardball, Maya?" she hissed, leaning over the desk so her face was only inches from mine. "Let us play hardball." DeAndre liked to record things. He liked to film our intimate encounters in the penthouse. He said it turned him on. "I have hours of high-definition video on this drive. Videos of your husband degrading you, calling you names, and doing things with me that he never did with you." She paused, expecting me to flinch, expecting me to show some sign of emotional devastation. When I remained perfectly still, her sneer deepened. "If you do not sign over the deed to the Buckhead mansion today, I am going to release every single video on this drive," she threatened. "I will send them to every major blog and news outlet in Atlanta. I will make sure your friends, your colleagues, and your new boss at Vanguard and Sterling see exactly what a joke your marriage was. I will humiliate the Williams family name so thoroughly that you will never be able to show your face in high society again. You give me the house or I destroy your reputation." Calvin shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly preparing to intervene and warn her about extortion laws. But I held up my hand to stop him. I did not need my lawyer to handle this. I wanted to handle this myself. I looked at the small silver flash drive resting on the table. Then I looked up at Chloe's desperate, panicked eyes. I let out a soft, genuine laugh. It was not a defensive laugh. It was the laugh of a woman who had already won the war. Publish them, I said, my voice completely devoid of concern. Chloe blinked in confusion. Her aggressive posture faltered for a second. What, she asked. I said, publish them. Chloe, I repeated, picking up my coffee cup and taking another slow sip. Send them to the blogs. Send them to the news networks. Send them to Harrison Sterling himself. Make sure you tag me in the posts when you do it. Do you want to know why I do not care about the videos, Chloe? Because I do not share his last name anymore. The Williams family reputation belongs to a woman currently sitting in a holding cell for embezzling church charity funds and a man facing decades for corporate fraud. That name is already dirt. You cannot humiliate me by exposing the degenerate behavior of a man I am actively sending to prison. Chloe stared at me, her mouth slightly open. The blackmail attempt had failed completely. Her only leverage was utterly useless against a woman who had no attachment to the ego of the man who betrayed her. But I am not finished, Chloe. I continued, setting the coffee cup down. I opened the leather folder sitting next to me. I pulled out a thick stack of printed financial logs generated by my M-Trace algorithm. I slid the papers across the desk so they rested right next to her silver flash drive. You see, Chloe, I said softly, I do not just track offshore bank accounts. I track domestic investments too. I know that 6 months ago you opened a high-end luxury boutique in Midtown. You sell imported silk and custom jewelry. It is a very beautiful store. You even did a grand opening feature in a local lifestyle magazine where you called yourself a self-made female entrepreneur. Chloe's breathing hitched. Her hands dropped from the edge of the desk. How do you know about my store? She whispered. I know about it because I know who paid for it, I replied. I tapped a manicured finger against the top page of the financial logs. It shows a direct wire transfer of $400,000 from one of DeAndre's Cayman Island shell companies directly into the primary business account of your boutique. You are not a self-made entrepreneur, Chloe. Your entire business is a money laundering front funded entirely by the money DeAndre stole from his law firm clients. The color drained from Chloe's face completely. She looked down at the financial logs and saw the undeniable paper trail linking her precious boutique directly to a massive federal crime. She took a stumbling step backward away from the desk. I did not know, she stammered, her voice pitching upward in terror. I swear I did not know where the money came from. He told me it was a business loan. He told me it was clean money. The Federal Bureau of Investigation does not care what he told you, I said, my tone turning ice cold. The feds care about the paper trail. Right now, you are holding the keys to a multi-million-dollar mansion that was purchased with illicit funds. You are operating a business built on stolen money. You are an accessory to federal wire fraud, money laundering, and corporate embezzlement. When the agents raid your boutique, they will seize your inventory, freeze your accounts, and likely place you under arrest as a co-conspirator. Chloe began to hyperventilate. The reality of her situation was finally crashing down upon her. The lavish lifestyle she thought she had secured was actually a one-way ticket to a federal indictment. She had tried to play a game of chess with a woman who owned the entire board. Please, Maya, she begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. Please, you cannot do this. I will lose everything. My business is all I have. I do not want to go to jail. I will do whatever you want. Just please do not give those files to the FBI. I looked at her weeping in front of my desk. She was just another casualty of the toxic ecosystem DeAndre and his family had created. She was greedy and opportunistic, but she was not the mastermind. She was just a pawn who got too close to the fire. I am going to give you a choice, Chloe, I said, leaning forward, resting my arms on the desk. Right now, in your expensive designer handbag, you have the keys to the Buckhead mansion. You are going to take those keys out and place them on this table. You are going to walk out of this office, and you are going to pack a very small bag. You are going to leave the state of Georgia today, and you are never going to contact me, DeAndre, or anyone associated with Vanguard and Sterling ever again. Chloe nodded frantically, digging into her bag with shaking hands. If you do exactly as I say, I continued, I will delay sending the financial logs regarding your boutique to the federal prosecutors for 48 hours. That gives you exactly 2 days to disappear before they freeze your business assets and issue a warrant for your arrest. But if you hesitate, If you try to take anything from that house, or if I ever see your face again, I will make one phone call, and the feds will raid your store before you even make it to the highway." Chloe pulled a heavy set of keys from her bag and threw them onto the mahogany desk. They landed with a loud metallic clatter sliding across the polished wood until they stopped right in front of me. She did not say another word. She turned around and ran out of the office. The heavy wooden door slammed shut behind her, leaving the room in absolute silence once again. I looked down at the keys resting on my divorce paperwork. The keys to the massive estate that Gloria had proudly claimed I would never set foot in again. The keys to the house DeAndre promised to his mistress. I picked them up, feeling the cool metal against my palm. Calvin let out a long, low whistle from the other side of the desk. "I have been a divorce attorney for 20 years, he said, shaking his head in amazement. "But I have never seen anyone dismantle a blackmail attempt quite like that. You absolutely destroyed her." I dropped the keys into my purse and offered Calvin a calm, professional smile. "She tried to threaten me with the shadow of a man who no longer exists," I replied. "Now, Mr. Calvin, let us finish this paperwork. I have a house to put on the market and a new empire to run." I signed my name on the final line of the divorce settlement, the ink flowing smoothly across the page. The secondary antagonist was gone, fleeing the state in terror. The properties were secured. The assets were firmly in my grasp. There was only one final battle left to wage. It was time to step into the courtroom and watch the arrogant man who had started all of this beg for a mercy he would never receive. I sit in the polished wooden chair of the Fulton County family courtroom, taking a slow and steady breath. The air conditioning hums quietly above me, keeping the room at a sterile chill. My attorney Calvin sits next to me, arranging a very thin stack of documents on the table. "We do not need boxes of evidence today. We do not need surprise witnesses or dramatic testimonies. The beauty of my software is that it distills years of elaborate lies into a few undeniable pages of pure financial truth." I smooth out the fabric of my tailored white suit. White is the color of new beginnings. It is also the color you wear when you know you have absolutely nothing to hide. I look up at the heavy wooden doors at the side of the courtroom, waiting for the final act of this tragedy to unfold. The heavy oak doors slowly swing open. The bailiff steps through the threshold, first followed by the man who spent 5 years trying to convince me I was entirely worthless. DeAndre does not look like a senior corporate attorney anymore. He has been stripped of his custom Italian suits and his expensive silk ties. He is wearing a bright orange county jail jumpsuit that hangs loosely on his shrinking frame. His wrists are shackled together at his waist, and the heavy metal chains clink against each other with a harsh metallic sound every time he takes a step. He is shuffling his feet, unable to walk with the arrogant stride that used to demand attention in every room he entered. His face is gaunt and covered in a patchy, unkempt beard. The dark circles under his eyes speak of sleepless nights in a concrete cell. The exhaustion radiating from his body is palpable. He looks completely broken. I watch him shuffle toward the respondent's table across the aisle from me. He is accompanied by an overworked public defender who looks like he has barely read the case file. DeAndre glances over at me. His eyes are hollow and desperate. He is searching my face for a shred of the naive, obedient wife he used to control. I do not look away from him. I hold his gaze with absolute cold authority until he is forced to look down at his shackled hands in shame. The power dynamic has shifted so violently that he cannot even bear to look me in the eye. The judge enters the courtroom. She is a stern-looking woman named Honorable Davis. Everyone in the room stands up as she takes her seat at the high wooden bench. She adjusts her reading glasses and looks down at the files arranged in front of her. She pulls out a specific document that I know all too well. It is the prenuptial agreement. My mind drifts back to the day DeAndre forced me to sign that document 5 years ago. We were sitting in a cold, sterile law office surrounded by his colleagues. DeAndre had just started making real money at Vanguard and Sterling, and his mother Gloria had convinced him that I was just a gold digger waiting to steal his future wealth. He practically threw the contract at me across the desk. He told me it was standard procedure for men of his elite caliber. He told me he needed to protect his hard-earned assets from women who might try to take advantage of his brilliance. The prenup was entirely one-sided. He had drafted it himself with the utmost arrogance, ensuring that I would leave the marriage with nothing but the clothes on my back if we ever divorced. But DeAndre was so arrogant that he included a very specific and ruthless morality clause to make himself look like an upstanding gentleman to his peers. The clause stated that if either party committed infidelity, that cheating party would immediately forfeit any and all claims to the marital assets. He wrote that clause because he thought he was completely invincible. He thought he was far too smart to ever get caught having an affair. He thought I was just a simple, uneducated bookkeeper who would never understand the complex offshore accounts and dummy corporations he used to hide his money and his mistresses. He built a legal cage to trap me and handed me the key without even realizing it. Judge Davis clears her throat and reads the morality clause aloud for the court record. Her authoritative voice echoes in the quiet room. She looks over her glasses directly at DeAndre, who is currently staring at the floor, wishing the earth would swallow him whole. Mr. Williams, the judge says, addressing him sharply. You drafted this agreement yourself. You set the terms of this marriage, and you defined the strict financial penalties for infidelity. Are you contesting the validity of your own legal document today? DeAndre opens his mouth to speak, but his voice fails him. His public defender stands up and speaks on his behalf. Your Honor, the defense attorney says, looking nervously at his notes. We are not contesting the validity of the prenuptial agreement itself, but we are firmly contesting the allegations of infidelity. My client denies any marital misconduct. The petitioner has no photographs, no private investigator reports, and no physical proof of an affair. Calvin stands up slowly from the chair next to me. He does not raise his voice. He simply picks up the thin stack of printed logs I brought with me. Your Honor, Calvin says, his tone dripping with professional confidence. My client has no need to rely on hearsay, circumstantial evidence, or grainy photographs to prove that Mr. Williams committed infidelity. We have his complete, undeniable financial footprint. Calvin walks over to the bench and hands the judge the M-Trace logs. These are the exact logs my software generated when it tracked the stolen money flowing out of DeAndre's accounts. These logs detail the exact flow of illicit funds from Mr. Williams' hidden offshore accounts directly to a luxury boutique owned by a woman named Chloe. Calvin explains to the court. The logs also show consistent monthly rental payments for a luxury penthouse apartment leased under a dummy corporation that Mr. Williams completely controls. The penthouse is occupied solely by this mistress. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have the credit card receipts for extravagant diamond jewelry purchases, luxury hotel stays, and romantic tropical vacations, all aligning perfectly with the exact dates my client was told her husband was out of town attending corporate legal seminars. DeAndre turns to his public defender and begins whispering frantically. He is shaking his head and gesturing with his shackled hands. He is trying to explain how I managed to get that highly encrypted information, but it does not matter anymore. The digital money trail is absolute. Judge Davis flips through the logs page by page. She is a seasoned judge who deals with bitter divorces and lying spouses every single day. But I can see the slight widening of her eyes as she reviews the sheer volume of his deceit. The mathematical proof is flawless. Every stolen dollar is accounted for. Every lie is quantified and time-stamped. There is no room for interpretation. Judge Davis sets the papers down on her bench. The evidence presented here today is completely overwhelming, she states firmly, locking her eyes on DeAndre. Mr. Williams, your own financial records show a sustained and highly funded extramarital affair spanning over 18 months. According to the very prenuptial agreement you authored and forced your wife to sign under threat of canceling your wedding, you have explicitly triggered the morality clause. You have officially forfeited your right to all marital assets. The words hang in the air, heavy and final. DeAndre cannot stay quiet anymore. The crushing reality of his total ruin hits him all at once. He stands up abruptly, his heavy metal chains rattling loudly against the wooden table. Your Honor, please, he cries out, his voice cracking with raw panic. You cannot leave me with absolutely nothing. All my other assets are currently frozen by the federal government because of the embezzlement investigation. My bank accounts are entirely seized by the FBI. If you take the house and the cars away from me today, I will not have a single dollar left to my name. The judge bangs her gavel demanding order, but DeAndre ignores her. He is unraveling completely in open court. I need to hire a criminal defense attorney for my federal fraud case. He begs, tears streaming down his gaunt face. My public defender is completely overwhelmed by the federal charges. Maya, please. He turns to me, begging openly in front of the judge, the armed bailiffs, and the court reporter. Maya, please look at me. Please leave me something. Leave me just enough money to pay a decent lawyer. I am looking at 20 years in a federal penitentiary. You cannot let them lock me away in a cage for the rest of my life. I am begging you, Maya. I am on my knees. Just give me enough of my own money to fight the federal charges so I do not die in prison. I look at this miserable man, who spent half a decade making sure I felt entirely dependent on his wealth. I look at the man who laughed in my face when he locked me out of my own software company. I look at the man who called me a charity case from the South Side and told me I would leave this marriage in a rusted old car. I do not blink. I do not show a single ounce of pity or hesitation. Your federal charges are the direct result of your own corporate theft. DeAndre, I say, my voice ringing clear and steady across the silent courtroom. You stole millions of dollars from your own law firm. You stole from your clients' trust funds. You stole my proprietary software and tried to sell it as your own invention. I will not fund your criminal defense with the assets you actively tried to hide from me to fund your mistress. You wanted to leave me with nothing but the clothes on my back. Now you are leaving this courtroom with nothing but the orange jumpsuit the county so generously provided for you. Judge Davis bangs her gavel a second time, striking the wood with a loud, authoritative crack. Mr. Williams, sit down and remain silent, she commands harshly. You drafted the contract, and you broke the contract. This court has absolutely no sympathy for a man who is victimized by the consequences of his own monumental greed. The judge looks down at her final order and picks up her pen. Based on the irrefutable evidence presented today, I am awarding the petitioner, Maya Williams, 100% ownership of the Buckhead Mansion, the estate properties, and all vehicles currently registered to the marital estate. Furthermore, given the overwhelming proof of intellectual property theft, attempting to be disguised as shared marital assets, I am awarding Maya Williams sole and exclusive ownership of all software patents, algorithms, and intellectual property associated with the M-Trace system. The respondent, DeAndre Williams, is stripped of all claims to these assets effective immediately. The gavel bangs a third and final time. It is the sound of my total liberation. The heavy, suffocating weight I carried for 5 years shatters completely, leaving nothing but clean air in its wake. DeAndre collapses back into his wooden chair, sobbing uncontrollably into his shackled hands. His shoulders heave as he cries, weeping for the empire he destroyed with his own arrogance. He has lost his multi-million-dollar mansion. He has lost his fleet of luxury cars. He has lost the millions he tried to steal from his firm. He has lost his beautiful mistress, his elite reputation, and his freedom. His mother is already locked away in a cell for wire fraud, and his brother sold him out to the federal prosecutors just to save himself. The entire empire of lies they built to make themselves feel superior to a fatherless girl from the projects has been leveled to dust. I stand up from the table. Calvin smiles broadly and shakes my hand, offering his quiet congratulations. I gather my designer purse and the thin folder containing my absolute victory. I turn and walk out of the courtroom, my heels clicking sharply against the polished marble floor. I leave DeAndre to weep in the presence of his overwhelmed public defender. The heavy oak doors close behind me, shutting him in the dark, while I step out into the bright, unfiltered light of my new reality. I pause just before reaching the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom. The bright, unfiltered light of the hallway is calling to me, but my absolute victory is interrupted by a pathetic sound. I hear the harsh rattling of metal chains echoing behind me. The court has been officially adjourned. The judge has already left the bench, retreating to her private chambers. The handful of spectators and legal aides have cleared out of the gallery. The sprawling room is mostly empty now, leaving only the raw aftermath of total destruction. Calvin, my attorney, has already packed his briefcase and is standing quietly by the aisle waiting for me to exit. I have my designer purse secured firmly on my shoulder. I am ready to walk out into the warm Atlanta sun and begin my new life as the sole owner of a technology empire. But the sound of the chains pulls my attention backward into the quiet room. I turn around slowly and look at the respondent's table. The overworked public defender is hurriedly shoving case files into a battered leather bag. He does not even look at his client. He wants absolutely nothing to do with a man facing decades of federal prison time. The defense attorney zips his bag and practically runs out the side door, abandoning the sinking ship without a second thought. DeAndre is left standing entirely alone between two armed county bailiffs. They have him by the arms, preparing to escort him back to the armored transport vehicle waiting in the loading bay. His bright orange jail jumpsuit hangs loosely on his emaciated frame, creating a violent visual contrast against the rich dark mahogany of the legal tables. He is dragging his feet, refusing to move forward. He is fighting against the grip of the officers, trying to buy himself a few more seconds of time. Maya, he calls out across the empty room. His voice is a broken, raspy whisper. It sounds like sandpaper scraping against dry wood. The arrogant, booming voice of the senior corporate attorney is completely gone. The man who used to command entire boardrooms can barely manage a pathetic whimper. Maya, please wait. Please just give me 1 minute, I beg you. The bailiffs pull on his chains, urging him to walk, but he digs his expensive shoes into the carpet. He looks at me with hollow, sunken eyes. He is pleading for a shred of the compassion I used to show him. He is searching my face for the naive, obedient wife who used to cook his dinners and balance his checkbooks while he slept with other women. He wants me to feel sorry for him. He wants me to look at his shackled hands and feel the familiar tug of misplaced guilt. Looking at him now, whining and begging in his metal chains, forces my mind to travel backward. The sterile smell of the courtroom fades away and is replaced by the memory of expensive cologne and spilled liquor. My thoughts pull me back to a very specific Tuesday evening exactly 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we were standing in the massive kitchen of the Buckhead Mansion. The exact same mansion the family court judge just awarded entirely to me. Back then, DeAndre treated that house like his personal kingdom, and he treated me like an annoying servant who had overstayed her welcome. I had been coding the foundational neural network for the M-Trace algorithm for 18 months straight. I was operating on 3 hours of sleep a night. My eyes were constantly burning from the harsh blue glow of my computer monitors. I had reached a critical juncture in the software development, but I had also hit a terrifying financial wall. The cloud hosting servers required to compile the massive data streams for my algorithm were incredibly expensive. The monthly hosting fee was due at midnight. My personal checking account was completely overdrawn. I had quietly invested every single penny of my own modest salary into the software architecture, keeping the project entirely hidden from my husband's greedy eyes. I needed exactly $200 to keep the servers online for the weekend. Just $200. If the servers went dark before the compilation finished, I would lose weeks of complex data. The algorithm would crash completely. My entire life work would be erased in a matter of seconds. I had absolutely no choice but to swallow my pride and ask my husband for a temporary loan. DeAndre was standing by the marble kitchen island, preparing to leave for an upscale networking dinner. He was wearing a custom-tailored silk suit that cost more than my entire server setup. He was pouring himself a glass of expensive, aged scotch. I approached him quietly. I explained my situation. I told him my algorithm was on the verge of a massive breakthrough. I explained the technical details, hoping he would see the value of my intellectual property. I asked him for a simple $200 loan just to get through the weekend, so the servers would not shut down. I promised him I would pay him back the exact amount as soon as my next paycheck cleared. DeAndre did not even look at me while I spoke. He just kept staring at his own reflection in the dark kitchen windows, adjusting the cuffs of his expensive shirt. When I finished pleading my case, he let out a loud, mocking laugh. The sound echoed off the high ceilings of the mansion, making me feel incredibly small. He set his scotch glass down on the marble counter. He finally turned to look at me, and his face was twisted into an expression of pure, absolute disgust. He reached into the tailored pocket of his trousers. He pulled out a thick silver money clip loaded with crisp $100 bills. He completely bypassed the hundreds. He bypassed the 50s. He bypassed the 20s. His manicured fingers pulled out a single crumpled $1 bill from the very center of the clip. He held the dirty dollar up in the air, dangling it between his fingers like a piece of trash. Then he tossed it directly at my face. The crumpled paper hit my cheek and fluttered down to the hardwood floor, landing near the toes of my shoes. "Buy a cheap cup of coffee and wake up from these delusions, Maya," he told me. His voice was laced with pure condescending venom. "You are a glorified bookkeeper. You are not a software engineer. You do not have the pedigree or the intellect to build anything of commercial value. You are wasting your time, and you are wasting my oxygen. Pick up that dollar, buy some cheap caffeine, and start acting like the basic typist you actually are." He stepped right over the dollar bill on the floor. He picked up his car keys and walked out the front door, leaving me completely alone in the massive empty kitchen. He went out to drink champagne with his corporate friends, while I stayed home and stared at a crumpled dollar bill on the floor. I did not cry that night. I bent down and picked up the paper currency. I smoothed out the heavy creases. I folded it neatly and placed it inside my pocket. It was the ultimate catalyst. It was the endless source of dark energy that powered my revenge. I found a way to pay the server fees the next morning by selling my own wedding band to a local pawn shop and replacing it with a cheap cubic zirconia replica that DeAndre never even noticed. I kept the servers online. I finished the M-Trace algorithm. And that exact algorithm is what just stripped him of his entire life. The memory fades away, leaving me standing in the cold, sterile air of the courtroom. DeAndre is still pulling against the bailiffs, trying to close the physical distance between us. "Maya," he pleads, his voice echoing off the high ceiling. "Please look at me. You know me. We spent 5 years of our lives together. You know I am not built for federal prison. They are going to transfer me to a maximum security facility tomorrow morning. All of my bank accounts are seized by the FBI. My mother is locked up. Jamal will not even answer the phone. Chloe took whatever cash I had in the hidden safe and disappeared. I have absolutely nothing, Maya. I do not even have money for the prison commissary. I cannot even buy a bar of soap." Calvin places a gentle hand on my shoulder, silently asking if I want him to call the bailiffs to intervene. I shake my head. I do not need my lawyer to protect me from a man in metal chains. I take a slow, deliberate step toward the wooden partition that separates the gallery from the trial tables. My white suit commands the physical space of the room. My heels click rhythmically against the marble floor. The sound is sharp and authoritative. DeAndre watches me approach. A pathetic glimmer of hope lights up his hollow, sunken eyes. He actually thinks my silence is a sign of hesitation. He actually believes my proximity implies forgiveness. "Thank you, Maya," he whispers, wiping his running nose against the rough orange fabric of his county jail uniform. "Thank you so much. I knew you would not let me rot in there with nothing. Just a few $1,000s, Maya. Just enough so I can buy extra food and make phone calls to my public defender. You just won tens of millions of dollars in assets today. You have the mansion and the cars and the patents. You can spare a tiny fraction of it for the man who gave you a beautiful home. Just a small loan, Maya. I will pay you back when I get out. I swear on my life I will pay you back." I stop walking when I reach the heavy wooden barrier. The armed bailiff shifts his weight, warning me to keep a safe distance from the prisoner. I nod to the officer, acknowledging the security protocol. I look down at DeAndre's shackled hands resting on the edge of the polished wooden partition. His fingers are trembling violently. The heavy steel cuffs look incredibly tight and painful around his wrists. He is leaning forward, desperate for a financial lifeline. I reach into my designer leather purse. The crisp sound of the metal clasp opening seems incredibly loud in the silent, empty courtroom. I slide my fingers past my wallet, past my car keys, and past the thick legal folder containing the absolute legal proof of my total victory. I reach into a small zippered compartment at the very bottom of the bag. I pull out a single crisp $1 bill. It is not the crumpled dollar he threw at my face 3 years ago. That dollar was spent a long time ago. This is a fresh new bill withdrawn from the bank specifically for this exact moment in time. I hold the dollar bill between my index and middle fingers. DeAndre stares at the paper currency. His brow furrows in deep, profound confusion. He does not understand what is happening. The glimmer of hope in his eyes begins to flicker and die as he tries to process the object in my hand. I extend my arm across the wooden barrier. I place the crisp $1 bill directly onto the polished wood right under his chained wrists. I slide it forward until the edge of the paper touches his trembling fingers. Buy some cheap coffee in the prison commissary. DeAndre, I say. My voice is smooth and chillingly calm. Wake up from your delusions. The words hit him with the devastating force of a freight train. The recognition crashes over his face in a violent tidal wave of realization. He remembers the kitchen. He remembers the marble island. He remembers the exact words he used to crush my spirit 3 years ago. He realizes in this crushing, agonizing moment that he manufactured his own executioner. He built the monster that just devoured his entire existence. The $1 bill resting under his chains is not a financial transaction. It is a mirror reflecting the absolute rotting core of his arrogant soul. The confusion completely evaporates from his eyes and is instantly replaced by sheer, unadulterated terror. He lets out a sound that I will never forget for the rest of my life. It is not a cry. It is a primal, guttural wail. It is the sound of a man watching the heavy iron gates of his life slam shut forever. He drops to his knees behind the wooden barrier, sobbing so violently that his entire body convulses. His head hits the polished wood, and the chains rattle loudly as he brings his shackled hands up to cover his weeping face. He is hyperventilating, gasping for air between harsh, desperate sobs. "No, Maya," he screams, his voice completely breaking. "No, please, you cannot do this to me. Please, Maya, please." The two bailiffs grab him by his armpits, lifting his dead weight off the floor. He does not try to stand. His legs are entirely useless. He just hangs between the two officers, dragging his feet across the courtroom floor as they begin to haul him toward the heavy oak doors leading to the holding cells. He is screaming my name over and over again. The sound of his weeping echoes off the high walls of the courtroom, bouncing against the judicial seals and the empty wooden benches. I do not blink. I do not flinch. I watch the bailiffs drag him through the threshold. The heavy oak doors swing shut with a loud, definitive thud, cutting off his screams completely. The silence that follows is incredibly beautiful. I leave the $1 bill resting on the wooden barrier. I turn my back on the empty room and I walk away. 6 months pass in the blink of an eye. The Atlanta summer heat gives way to a crisp autumn breeze. I walk through the heavy revolving doors of the Vanguard and Sterling corporate building. The soaring glass lobby is just as imposing as the day I first walked in to destroy my ex-husband. But everything else has completely changed. I am no longer wearing the invisible cloak of a quiet, dutiful wife. I am wearing a custom-tailored emerald green suit that commands the physical space of the room. My heels click rhythmically against the polished marble floor. The sound echoes through the massive atrium, bouncing off the high glass walls. The security guards at the front desk do not ask for my identification today. They stand up a little straighter as I approach their station. The head of security gives me a respectful nod and presses a button under his desk. The private executive elevator opens immediately. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams," he says, his voice filled with genuine deference. They all know exactly who I am now. They know I am the woman who orchestrated the greatest corporate purge in the history of the firm. I step into the elevator and the doors glide shut. The ascent to the top floor is smooth and silent. My mind drifts to the events of the past 6 months. After the divorce was finalized, I spent my time upgrading the M-Trace algorithm. The Federal Bureau of Investigation used my software to dismantle Gloria's entire money laundering ring at the church. She took a plea deal to avoid a public trial, but she is still serving a 10-year sentence in a federal minimum security camp. Jamal got 3 years for his cooperation. DeAndre was not so lucky. Without any marital assets to fund a high-priced defense team, he was assigned an overworked public defender who advised him to plead guilty to every single count of corporate embezzlement and wire fraud. He is currently locked away in a maximum security facility, serving a 25-year sentence. His mistress Chloe fled to Florida and completely disappeared from the grid. The empire of lies they built to make themselves feel superior to me was entirely eradicated. The elevator chimes softly as it reaches the penthouse level. The metal doors open wide to reveal the sprawling executive reception area. The executive assistants do not stare at me with confusion anymore. They offer warm, professional smiles as I walk past their polished desks. I head straight down the long, wide corridor toward the main corner office. The heavy mahogany door is already open. Professor Harrison Sterling is standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the sprawling Atlanta skyline. He turns around when he hears my footsteps on the hardwood floor. He is wearing an immaculate navy blue suit and holding 2 crystal flutes filled with expensive champagne. A thick stack of legal contracts rests on the center of his massive desk. "Welcome back," Maya Harrison says, handing me one of the crystal flutes. "You are right on time as always." I take the glass and offer a polite, quiet smile. "I pride myself on my punctuality, Mr. Sterling," I reply, taking a slow, deliberate sip of the champagne. It is crisp and perfectly chilled. Harrison walks over to his desk and taps his fingers against the stack of thick papers. "The board of directors held their final vote this morning," he tells me, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and eager anticipation. I look at the contracts resting on the desk. "We have been negotiating the sale of my software for months. Vanguard and Sterling wants exclusive rights to use the M-Trace algorithm for all their internal and external audits. I expect him to offer me a massive buyout check." But Harrison shakes his head slowly. "The board approved the purchase of your software, Maya," he explains, "but I told them I was not interested in just buying a piece of code. Software becomes outdated. Algorithms need constant updating. I told the board that I do not just want the machine, I want the absolute genius who built the machine." I set my champagne glass down on the desk, listening closely. Harrison slides the contracts across the polished wood toward me. "Vanguard and Sterling is officially offering you the position of senior partner," Harrison says, his voice ringing with absolute clear authority. "We are creating a brand new division called Global Forensic Investigations, and we want you to be the sole head of the entire department. You will have your own team of forensic accountants, your own floor in this building, and your own corporate empire to run. You will report to no one but me." I stare at the contracts resting in front of me. A senior partnership at the most prestigious law firm in the state. This is the exact position DeAndre lied, cheated, and stole to get. This is the exact position he thought I was too uneducated and too poor to ever understand. He spent 5 years telling me I was just a basic typist from the South Side. He told me I would never be anything more than a glorified bookkeeper. Now I am being handed the keys to the very kingdom he was permanently banished from. I pick up a heavy gold pen resting on the desk. I do not hesitate for a single second. I flip to the last page of the contract and sign my name with a smooth, deliberate flourish. The black ink dries on the paper, sealing my total, absolute victory. I set the pen down and pick up my champagne glass. Harrison raises his flute to meet mine. The crystal glasses clink together with a bright, resonant chime that fills the room. Harrison smiles warmly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "To the very smartest investment I have ever made on a commercial flight," he says quietly. I drink the champagne and let the reality of my new empire wash over me. The view from the top of the Vanguard and Sterling building is breathtaking, but it is nothing compared to the view of justice playing out across the city. Miles away from the executive penthouse, Gloria is wearing a scratchy, oversized khaki uniform. She is holding a cheap plastic broom with blistering hands. She is sweeping the sticky floors of a community center as part of her federal work release program. Her manicured nails are ruined and chipped. Her designer handbags have been seized and auctioned off by the government to pay restitution to the church she stole from. The women she used to look down on now walk past her without a second glance. She is a ghost of her former self, a disgraced matriarch sweeping dirt in a neighborhood she used to mock. She stops to rest her aching back and catches her reflection in a smudged glass window. The fake pearls are gone, and so is her pride. She is completely invisible. Across town, the lunchtime rush is peaking at a fast food drive-thru. Jamal is wearing a stiff polyester visor and a grease-stained polo shirt. He is handing a greasy paper bag through a sliding glass window. The man who called himself a visionary entrepreneur, who lived lavishly off his wife's generational wealth, is now working for minimum wage. Sarah took absolutely everything in the bitter divorce. His credit is permanently ruined, and his criminal record for embezzlement ensures no corporate office will ever hire him again. A customer yells at him from inside a sedan for forgetting their extra sauce. Jamal bites his lip and apologizes, repeatedly handing over a small plastic packet. His hands shake with deep humiliation. He realizes that this is his life now. There is no luxury pool house to retreat to. There is no wealthy brother to bail him out. There is only the harsh fluorescent light of the drive-through window and the sickening smell of cheap frying oil. He traded his family for a plea deal and ended up with nothing. Deeper inside the federal prison system, DeAndre sits on a thin, lumpy mattress in a tiny concrete cell. The man who drafted ironclad prenuptial agreements and wore custom Italian suits is now just a sequence of numbers in the Federal Registry. He stares blankly at the cold cinder block wall. There are no windows in his cell. There is no view of the Buckhead skyline. He has 24.5 years left on his sentence. He spends every single minute of every single day replaying the moment he threw that crumpled $1 bill at my face. He realizes that his own arrogance was the exact architect of his total destruction. He had a brilliant wife who could have built a massive empire right by his side, but his fragile ego needed to make her feel incredibly small. Now he is locked in a cage, and the woman he called a basic typist owns everything that used to be his. While they suffer the heavy consequences of their endless greed, I am busy rewriting the future. The Buckhead mansion is completely unrecognizable now. I stripped away the sterile, cold decor that DeAndre favored. The estate is warm and vibrant, filled with life and purpose. Tonight, the sweeping circular driveway is lined with luxury vehicles, but they do not belong to corrupt lawyers or fake socialites. They belong to philanthropists, technology investors, and respected community leaders. I am hosting the inaugural charity gala for a brand new foundation I created. It is an organization designed specifically to fund and mentor underprivileged Black women in the tech industry. I am using the vast wealth I secured from the divorce and my new senior partnership to pull other brilliant women up. I am making absolutely sure that no smart girl from the South Side is ever told she is just a charity case. I step out onto the massive marble balcony. The warm Atlanta night air wraps around me like a comforting embrace. Hundreds of guests are gathered on the manicured lawn below, holding champagne flutes and celebrating the launch of the foundation. I walk up to the standing microphone. The towering, glittering Atlanta skyline sits directly behind me, serving as the perfect, magnificent backdrop for my ultimate victory. The crowd quiets down immediately, waiting for me to speak. I look out at the sea of attentive faces. I see young women who remind me of myself 5 years ago, hungry, brilliant, and waiting for a genuine opportunity. I lean into the microphone. My voice carries across the sprawling estate, steady and powerful. For a long time, I let other people dictate my inherent value, I tell the crowd. I let people who were deeply intimidated by my potential convince me that I was meant to stay hidden in the shadows. They told me I did not belong at their exclusive table. They told me my background made me unworthy of their basic respect. They tried to steal my hard work, and they tried to break my spirit because they thought I was weak. I pause, letting the heavy words settle over the completely silent audience. They thought they could bury me, I say, my voice ringing with absolute, unwavering certainty. They piled their lies and their abuse and their arrogance on top of me, expecting me to suffocate under the crushing weight of it all. But they forgot one very simple rule of nature. I look up at the bright stars, shining fiercely above the city. I am a seed, I declare, and seeds only know how to grow when you leave them in the dark. For a split second, the entire estate is perfectly silent. Then the crowd erupts. The applause is deafening. It washes over the marble balcony like a roaring wave of validation and triumph. Young women are cheering loudly, and seasoned investors are clapping enthusiastically. I step back from the microphone, taking in the beautiful sound. I reach out and pick up my crystal glass of champagne from the podium. I look out at the brilliant, glowing city that I have completely and totally conquered. A genuine, peaceful smile spreads across my face. I raise my glass high into the air, toasting to the empire of the black sheep. The cheers echo endlessly into the dark night sky as the screen slowly fades to a deep, beautiful black. The story teaches us that true power comes from within. When people try to bury you, they only plant the seeds of their own destruction and fuel your ultimate rise. You do not ever need to shrink yourself to fit at a table built entirely on deceit and fragile egos. Instead, you must use your own brilliance and unwavering integrity to build a completely new empire on your own terms. Loyalty is an action, and respect must always be earned. Never let anyone dictate your worth based on your past. Your greatest struggles will ultimately become your most powerful weapons. If you have ever had to walk away from a toxic environment to build your own empire, please share your story in the comments below and subscribe to the channel for more journeys of strength and justice.